Welcome to Gumball Love. I'm Melissa Ledger, professional relationship coach, creator of Gumball Love and the Back to You Academy. If you're ready to stop the cycle of toxic men, get through the breakup once and for all, and finally get back to you, you are in the right place. This journey is about healing your heart, and you are encouraged to take the pace that is just right for you. In the process, you will build a foundation of confidence and strength that will make you unshakable, I promise. So get ready to level up your mindset and your lifestyle as you awaken the seeds of greatness just waiting to burst into full bloom. Let's do this. Welcome back to another episode of Gumball Love. I'm your host, Melissa Ledger. All right, sorry about my voice. I have a cold or maybe some version of, that thing that's going around. But I am feeling better. My voice is just not recovering as fast as I would like, but I thought I better get on and do a podcast. So this is kind of weird, but I started doing the F Factor diet, and it prompted me to start listening to all things related to F Factor. I'm trying to really learn how to do this. If you're not familiar with the F Factor diet, it's created by Tanya Zuckerbrot, and it's about implementing a high fiber diet into your diet so that you are able to lose weight, but also not feel hungry. And it's fascinating. There's tons of podcasts. In fact, we'll link some podcasts. She was interviewed on the Skinny Confidential. And then I just started researching, where else has she been interviewed? I really want to understand this and kind of have her in my head so I can really implement this into my lifestyle. And because I am somebody that I like to eat. And so I'm like, how can I eat healthy and feel full? And what are the hacks? I found that a lot of people that are really fit, they find ways to eat things that taste sweet or taste good or give them the things that they're looking for, but in ways that are not as impactful as, like a value meal at a fast food place or eating all the pasta or all the bread. And so I found her very interesting. And in my search for another podcast, I found this podcast of her talking about her divorce. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is quite interesting how she was describing, here she was literally on TV doing all these interviews about the F Factor diet. And she was doing so well in her career. She had 3 children. She was married, and she was absolutely miserable in her marriage. And she was talking about how when she was going to get married to her husband, her dad told her, I don't think you have enough in common. I don't think he's smart enough for you. And at the time, she was only in her late 20s, and she was like, what do you mean, Dad? And he was like, I don't know. I don't feel like he's going to be smart enough for you. So as a side note, when I was 18, I got engaged to a guy, and at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is, he was kind of my childhood crush. I rarely talk about this guy, but I'm going to talk about him a little bit in the book. And I remember I called into Dr. Laura Schlesinger, and this is so crazy, you guys, the odds, calling into Dr. Laura. If you're not familiar with her, she's in her prime, and she's still on, I think she's on Sirius. She's still on the radio, but in her prime, she was such a huge deal, and it was impossible to call in. But I called in, and I got in, and I said to her, she was a get to the point, kind of a scary person to call in, because you were like, oh my God, if anyone rambled on, she was she would cut them off, and she would be kind of rude, and it was scary to call her. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to be super organized. I'm going to tell her my issue. And I said, she would ask you, I'm engaged. She would say, with a ring and a date? And I said, I have the ring, but I hadn't set the date. And I wasn't setting the date because I felt like, oh, I need to go to college first. I don't want to get married when I'm 18. That was smart. But in reality, I was having doubts. I didn't want to get married yet because I wasn't sure about the relationship. And so I told her, I said, I'm not intellectually stimulated. And is that going to be a problem? And she said to me, she said, well, you don't need intellectual stimulation in your relationship. You can get that through your work, through your friends. And when you get home and you talk to your husband, you just talk about regular old stuff. And I said, 18 years old, I go, just regular old stuff? And she goes, just regular old stuff. And I was just like, ugh. I remember thinking, I know this lady's on the radio and she has all the answers, but I hate that answer. And I was not satisfied. And I just kind of hung up the phone feeling defeated. And so fast forward to today, I never settled. And the short version of that guy ended up cheating on me anyway. And I just knew he wasn't the right person for me. So I eventually ended up breaking up with him. And as I went through dating in my 20s and in my 30s, I just wasn't finding that person that I could imagine myself with. And I would get in, probably 2 or 3 different times after that, it was like, okay, this is getting to that point where they're going to consider proposing. And, okay, one guy had a ring and I was scared for him to propose. And then the second time we were ring shopping, and I remember looking at him getting ready to spend $9,000 on this diamond. And I was like, I don't want this ring. I don't want this. It was like, I'm looking at the ring and I'm not really that, you're not going to woo me with a diamond. It's just not going to be what, I want the brain. And so I was just and I needed so many other things from that relationship. And you guys may have heard me tell the story. I just wanted to run out of the jewelry store. I was like, this is not right. So what's going on? And so I'm listening to this podcast with Tanya Zuckerbrot, creator of the F Factor, talking about her husband and this marriage that she was in, and her dad telling her from the very beginning, he's not smart enough for you. And she ended up having 3 children, 1 child and a twin. So she had 3 kids with them. 13 years later, she realized that they were living pretty much completely separate lives. The friends that she wanted to hang out with, the things that she wanted to do, they weren't the things that he wanted to do. And so, and she found herself irritated with him about, everything he was doing was annoying. And I'll link this podcast so you can see what she was talking about and hear it in her words. But this is the thing I feel like single people don't do. We don't look at screwed up marriages enough. We don't let's look at women that are contemplating divorce. Why are they doing it? It's such a window into what you need to be looking for in a healthy relationship. Not to say you would compare yourself to that relationship exactly, but just looking at, wow, what ends up being the thing that makes people go hire an attorney and file for divorce? If you want to follow, I was on her podcast, Happy Even After. That's another great podcast to follow. And she's a divorce lawyer that she's on her 3rd marriage. She's like, I had shame around that, but she eventually got over it because she had to go through it a couple of times, and even her divorces weren't even actually very dramatic or bad. She just had to make some hard decisions. So I'm making sure I have her Instagram correct. So yeah, it's happy.even.after, and it's Renee Bauer, who's a divorce attorney. So I want you to look at, okay, what is it that people do? Why do they get divorced? And sometimes, obviously if somebody cheats, okay, that's an obvious reason to get divorced, or somebody lies, or, there's some big things. But what about the things that we don't really see on the outside, that we only know on the inside? And that could be, it is such a powerful window. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask because I also want to make sure I give you the podcast that I was listening to. Okay, it's called Moms Moving On. And it's moms moving on, navigating divorce, single motherhood. So even if you're a single mom too, and you have gone through a divorce, I know a lot of women are in that place too, where you're just like, am I doing the right thing? And I think you could find a lot of interesting discussions in this. So this is by Michelle Dempsey. And so it's moms moving on, navigating divorce, single motherhood, and co-parenting. Like, listen, if you are single and you don't have children and you're looking for a guy, listen to what these women go through. So when you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, I'm 35 and I feel like I need to have a baby and maybe this is my only chance. Listen to what it's like if you just take a chance on a guy that maybe shouldn't be the father of your child. And look at how many of us know, and you might be a single mom where you're navigating your marriage or your relationship with your ex that is the father of your child, and it's constant issues. It's something that you're going to have to live with, and you love your child. And obviously, I don't think any child isn't by any means a mistake or an accident. I think we're all, whoever our parents are, they're supposed to be our parents. So it was meant to be. However, I think that if you haven't had a child, if you haven't been married yet, you can learn. Or if you are in a single parent situation, you can listen to these other stories and say, okay, I want to make sure that I make the right choice. And let's look at maybe some things that I haven't really paid attention to before. And so I was thinking about what she was saying, and I made some notes myself of just like this whole knowing yourself and knowing who you are and your hobbies. Like, this is why it's important, because so I have my notes here. We look at the idea of marriage and we fantasize and we think it's like, romance and having dinners and going on vacations and love letters and all the things. But what is the reality of true compatibility? What do you have to talk about? What do you have to do? I mean, these are things that, especially, we're at home a lot more. And like Ian used to work in corporate America. We were both in New York City, walking the streets of Manhattan. That's a lot to keep your mind busy and entertained. So then now we're both of us working from home, and like, do you have enough to talk about and entertain yourselves in a relationship if you're just in a house like 24/7 pretty much, and you go out occasionally? But just think of that. Like, okay, now, and I think a lot of couples really were put to the test in the last 2 years of now we're in close quarters. Like, what do we have? What do we have to talk about? So this is when, so you guys know, like in the beginning of Ian's my relationship, I had this fantasy idea when we first met, but when we reconnected in 2020, we connected on our beliefs. So we could talk politics, religion. We can turn on a documentary. I mean, was it 2 nights ago, we watched a whole documentary about fungus, which I know sounds like, really, guys, get a life. But like, we can watch that kind of stuff. And then we can turn on Friends and enjoy that. And then we watched the Last Dance, Michael Jordan documentary. We both like football. We both like basketball. And so we can watch sports together. We can talk about gumball love together. And so this is a constant fuel to our relationship. And so sometimes we're sitting on a date and we're trying to be good enough for a guy. We're trying to hope that, oh, does he think I'm cute, or does it? But it's like when you see the reality, like, okay, beyond when they think you're cute and yeah, you might have some hot makeouts, like what's going to hold that relationship together? And I think when you look at marriage and you look at what makes marriages fail or thrive, it will change how you look at dating entirely. Listen to what women struggle with. I want you to hear Tanya's explanation, because you'll get both an amazing, if you're really struggling with fitness or health, or like, oh my God, I'm so frustrated with my diet, and you want to feel better, and you can take a look at the F Factor. It's amazing. But also just listening to her story of when she got divorced, she was like, I got divorced because I didn't want my kids to see that I wasn't even loving on their father. They weren't seeing me be affectionate. They were seeing me be annoyed, irritated, unhappy. And so some people stay together for the kids, so the kids can watch a miserable mom and dad. I mean, that's not good either. And she made a really good point. She said, I didn't want my son to grow up watching a mother not be affectionate with the father. Like he would grow up with a mother that, she's like, I didn't want him to marry somebody like I was being to his father. I was like, wow, that's powerful. If you have a son, it's like, you're being the woman, that's the example he's seeing as a woman and how she interacts in a relationship. And so think of that. I mean, just the gravity of this decision is so monumental. And so we think being single is so terrible, but the wrong relationship is much worse. It's like actually being single, you can manage a single life, and I can teach you how to do that all day long. However, being in the wrong relationship can derail you for years. In her case, a decade, where she got her career on track, but she was miserable. And she actually said she didn't want to live. She had 3 children and she didn't want to live. It was like a person, your significant other, your spouse, could literally suck the life out of you. Or they can be the person that you want to spend all your time with. And so this is why friendship is the foundation, is the key. Friendship, if you have your significant other is also your friend, which by the way, if you're with gumball guys, they were never your friend. Prove me wrong. If I could sit at a table with a sign, your gumball guy was never your friend. They're not good friends because you're always completing the transaction. What's in it for them? So you end up serving them, whether it's you're chasing them, you're convincing them, you're competing with somebody else, you're entertaining them, you're arousing them, you're fighting with them, you're trying to idolize them and make them feel like, oh my God, you're the most amazing. Like it's always about them. You're always completing the transaction, and that will exhaust you. It will waste your life. It will rob you of weeks, months, years. They're not worth it. There's nothing you're missing out on by continuing a gumball guy relationship. So, but I think that the idea of the fantasy of, once he gets through all these things, then what? Like, is it really going to be that great even if he fixes X, Y, and Z? Is he your friend? Can you hang out? Can you talk about things? Can you just relax and be yourself? Like I've been sick the past few days and I was just thinking, wow, I can like sit here and blow my nose and lay here and just be sick. And he still wants to hold my hand, still wants to hug me, kiss me. Like, I'm just like, wow, this is just beyond what I would have ever expected. But it's just being loved unconditionally. It's not written about enough. It's not talked about enough. And that true compatibility on so many levels is what you need. So Tanya actually met her now husband right after she separated from her ex-husband. And I mean, her whole life is so much different. They like to do the same things. Their lifestyles sync up to each other. And it's absolutely critical. And so that's why I teach you, we have to develop or really figure out our lifestyle. And look, I feel like I've kind of beat this message to death. Like, if you're just watching Netflix and working out and doing your work, like, is that really a life? I don't know. Maybe that is what you want to do. And if that's what you want to do, you need to find somebody who can enjoy that life. But I feel like we all are called to so much more. We really are more interesting. We do have more interests. If I sat you in front of a bookshelf of tons of books and told you to pick out the ones that, okay, if I throw you in jail for a year, like, what do you want to read about? What shows do you want to watch? Like, you got 1 hour, pick the stuff that you're going to have to watch for 1 year. Like, all of a sudden you'd start thinking, okay, yeah, do you want to read a book about, frogs? Maybe you do, but if you don't, like, what else? Would you rather read about frogs or horses? Would you rather read about fish or, I don't know, giraffes? Like, I mean, there's just endless things that we can be interested in, but I think we're spending so much time worried about what I want to be, what this guy wants. But then you're not really being who you are. And so then you're sitting there talking about his stuff, and it's just not going to work. So the point of this podcast is to bring your awareness level to what actually makes you compatible. And instead of watching fantasy, which I know we're going to do anyway, but in addition to watching fantasy, we'll say, also look at what makes people get divorced. What are women in marriages struggling with? I started looking at this years ago, and it made me realize, these married people are really not that happy. I mean, I looked at my life and I thought at the time, I was living in New York and I was dancing, and I found some of them were jealous of what I was doing. And I thought, married women with kids and the house and the dog and all the things, they're looking over at what I'm doing. And why? Because they're not doing what lights them up. They just checked boxes. Are those the boxes that they really wanted to check? I don't know. But there's something about what I'm doing that's making them think or doubt what they're doing. And then some of them I really could see and have insight into what their marriages were actually like. And really looking at their husbands going, would I want to be married to that guy? Not really. I started looking at most people I know, and look, they're not the right person for me. They were the right person for them, but you just, you look at them and like, do you want to be married to that guy? Do you really? Sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, the person you're looking at, do you really want that life? Like who they are, what they do, their kids, like would you, if you could trade, like right now, would you? Most of the time you're like, actually, no. And it's pretty empowering. Like you kind of do want your life. You don't want somebody else's life. And if you do want somebody else's life, obviously you can't take it. So what is it that you think you want over there? And maybe there are some things that you actually do want that you can incorporate into your life. I would look at influencers and it was like, what is it that I'm really coveting? It's like, I'm coveting that they're helping other people, that they've built their platform, that they're doing a podcast. So then there was the time where I'm like, okay, I need to do a podcast. I need to create online programs. I need to create group coaching. I need to create one-on-one coaching. And so I did it. And eventually I wasn't looking over, or the people I'd look over, I would think, yeah, I kind of know what it's like to manage that. And I know that it's not all, like doing this isn't a fantasy. You have to enjoy the work. There is no fantasy podcaster life. It's like you get done recording the podcast, you're writing content, you're interacting with customers. That piece has to be what you love. It's not like it comes with this glamorous lifestyle. So it's with anything. When we're looking over and we're imagining what it's going to be like, the reality is often completely different than we think it is. So I want you to take some time and look around at some podcasts that talk about going through divorce. I know it kind of sounds depressing, but I think you will find it empowering to be like, ooh, I never thought of that. Like women that are like, yeah, they have what you think you want and they're getting out. Why are they getting out? What are they annoyed with? What caused the demise of their relationship? And why does single life look better to some married women? And then when you hear that, you'll sit differently as a single person and be like, okay, I guess I don't have it so bad. Because there's a lot of women with rings on their fingers and the house and the car and the dog and the kids, and they're wishing they were where I was. We don't think of that often enough. And when I was listening to her podcast, I was like, man, this needs to be discussed. So this gets back to think about what you want. When I go back all the way to when I was 18 years old, what was I looking for? Intellectual stimulation. I wanted to be able to talk about ideas, and I wanted a challenge. I wanted somebody to argue with me, not in a negative way, but give me pushback. And so Ian can sit in my office and we can talk about gumball love, and he'll be like, I don't know. I mean, is it really that way? Because what about this or that? And then I'll be like, oh yeah. And then I'm writing notes because his brain will stimulate mine, or I'll stimulate his. And then sometimes we'll be in a disagreement and he'll look at me and he'll go, well, you're fighting for this right now. So it must mean it's important. Like being able to debate with someone, but also not have to I don't have to tiptoe around his ego. His ego's in check. So he's not offended and I'm not like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Like there's none of that. We're both secure enough. We can debate it out. And sometimes I'm like, sorry if I got a little too fired up, and he understands the passion behind what I'm doing. And so sometimes it's like, I hear what you're saying, but I'm holding on to this point. What you're saying makes sense, but I feel strongly about this. And then sometimes I'll feel strongly about it. And then I'll come around and be like, you know what? You're right. I am going to go back to that. I couldn't justify it in my mind long enough. It was like I was holding on to it, but then after a while be like, I see what you're saying. So I hope this helps you to relax a little bit about this panic to find a guy. Look, you can't panic about it. You can't hurry it. You can't rush it. You don't want to, because otherwise you're just going to end up in a different place of being unhappy. And you're just going to be annoyed AF with some dude where she was like, oh God, just even the breathing, the way he was chewing his food, the way he did everything just irritated her. And then you're grossed out by the very person that's in your bed every night, that's laying on your couch, you're going to talk to every day. I mean, another podcast I want to link before I forget is the Skinny Confidential, him and her podcast with Lauren Everett and Michael Bostic, or I guess Lauren Bostic. I'm so used to saying her maiden name. They did a podcast about why most relationships fail. And it was really interesting. They talked about, all their friends that are in relationships and they come to them for advice or they complain to them about things. And it was like the things that people think and do you know what the number one thing, I'll just give you a spoiler to the podcast. The number one thing they said was people settling because they had some kind of clock attached. I have to do it by this time. I have to check this box. I have to have the kid. I've got to do it. And so they just forced it with the person that was there right now instead of waiting. Oh my gosh, I'm looking, it's 11:11 right now as I'm saying that. So for those of you that have 11s, like don't settle. It's not worth it. It's another place you'll be stuck. So checking the box, having then you got to think about too, like, who is it for? Is it for some judgy aunt? Some person that's like, and everybody, as soon as you're in a relationship, it's when you're getting married. Then when you're getting married, it's when you're having a kid. Then when you have a kid, it's when you're having another kid. Are you having more kids? Like there's always these people that are going to say these things. You know what I've started to say to those people? Oh, you're one of those timeline people. Do you have a certain timeline you feel like it should happen? Like, so if I do it within the timeline, are you going to come over and like help me with the kid? Oh, and the second kid, like what is it about your time? Like, why do you feel like it needs to happen in a certain timeline? And people get weird when you ask them. It's like, get out. Like, what are you doing? This is none of your business. When it happens, how it happens, like, who are these people? Really think, sometimes you need to write down, who are the people? I've done this before. I've written down the list of people that are putting pressure on me. And then you got to look at those names and be like, okay, am I going to disrupt or alter my life dramatically for these 4 people, 3 people? Maybe it's 2. Sometimes it's surprising, like, who it actually is. I mean, I remember looking at a list and writing down, like, who's putting pressure on me? Who do I feel like I have to do this for? What's actually going on? And when you have it on paper, you look at it and you're like, wow. And then look at those people and be like, and what's going on in their life? Are they actually in a happy marriage? I mean, I'm thinking of one person right now that puts a lot of pressure on a lot of people, and their marriage is weird. I don't consider it happy at all. Looks happy on the outside, but it's completely dysfunctional on the inside. Not something I would trade in a million years. And they haven't really accomplished what they want to accomplish in life. They're constantly trying to be an authority when they said, oh yeah, I'll do all these things, and they never did them. And it's just like, you have failed based on your own standards, and now you're judging everybody else. Like, screw that person, love you. And maybe you have good intentions, but I'm no longer going to elevate your opinion. And sometimes these are people that they've been in our life since childhood. And so we have this sense of like, I've got to get their approval. But I want you to start pushing back and saying things like, can you tell me when you ask me when something's going to happen, when are you going to meet somebody? It seems like there's some urgency in the question. And I'm curious as to if you feel like it should happen in a certain timeline. Because I don't know how you rush meeting the love of your life. They come when they come. So it's not really something that's in my control. What do you want me to do? Go out to a bunch of social events and look desperately around for single men? What is that solution in your mind? Get them to it's like, you want to make me uncomfortable? I'm going to make you uncomfortable in this situation. It's like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but you cannot control when you meet the love of your life. Look, I was trying like so hard. I was on dating apps for on and off for 20 years. It never happened. It was like from my early 20s all the way until probably got off of dating apps in my 38, maybe. I was finally over it. But I mean, that's a long time to be on freaking dating apps on and off. And every time I'd go on it wasn't the time for me. And then the next girl can go on and she meets a guy in like 6 months. Super irritating. It's like, I feel like, no, you need to do the 20 years of work. No, I'm just kidding. No, the whole point of this is cutting down the time it takes. Now, I believe you can alter the timeline by not wasting time, filtering like a freak, getting those guys out. Stop wasting time on the wrong people. Stop waiting around for a guy to change. I mean, that if I could go back and tell my young self, like, once you determine that they're not ready, they're not responding, they're being low effort, like, get rid of them. They're not worth it. If I could just have had the confidence to make those cuts and make them quick and not look back and just be sort of ruthless about it, that's what I would do. But easier said than done. It's hard to be ruthless because, we have a heart and we have emotions, and it's a matter of reconciling that. But once you understand what it actually takes to make a marriage work, you will look at these low effort gumball guys and be like, oh, okay, I know he's cute and he has potential, but he's not going to be a husband in the next 5 years. So do I want to spend the next 1 to 5 years waiting and hoping that he does all the things that make him turn into some guy that could actually be a long-term partner and friend? You know what I mean? Like, once you start seeing, am I turning the couch potato into a marathon runner when he's not even talking about going to a gym? Like, how long is this process going to take? And do I have the time to do it? And so that's when you make tough choices. I mean, we have girls in our group coaching right now that they're making those decisions. I'm letting go of a guy. I'm really into him. I'm heartbroken. I'm freaking dying. I'm crying about it. I'm like, it can be gut wrenching, and it's really difficult. However, look, I went through those. I get it. I mean, I have cried. I have, but what I would do is I would clean, I would organize, I would put on the music, I would listen to podcasts. I figured out tools to get me out of that space, get me distracted. And, one of those things was moving to New York, move somewhere. Like, I was telling Ian, I'm like, if I was single right now, I'd probably move to Miami. I would just be like, I said, if you and I broke up for some reason, he was like, oh God, don't even talk about it. But I'm like, it's just, I already know myself. Like, I would be like, all right, I'm going to go to Miami. There's tons of dancing there, and I would just be dancing and going out to salsa clubs. And, I know, like, I have the toolbox to get through it. would be the hardest, most gut wrenching heartbreak of my life. However, I could get through it. I know I could do it. And so, because I developed the muscle and the understanding of what I need to do to push through that. So you can do this. And that muscle is now, it's kind of weird, but it's what sustains our relationship, because now I have so many I don't know what to call them, like interest muscles, where it's like I have all these desires to pursue all these things all the time. And I've got too many books that I'm trying to read all the time, and podcasts are going all the time. And like if I'm in the shower, I'm getting ready, or I'm doing laundry, there's always a podcast going. And I just think, wow, I can live this life with Ian Roberts as my love, and I can do everything I was doing as a strong single person, but he just lets me be me, and we'll listen to podcasts, be like, hey, we were listening to the F Factor diet. Like, hey, can we listen to this? So we listened to the F Factor diet while we were eating dinner. So I'm just saying, like, this is the stuff that people don't, is it sexy to talk about it? I don't know, but does it work? Yes, it's the reality. Do you want to settle for a guy that you can't even stand the way he breathes in a year from now? Like, and now you have his kid or 2 or 3, and you can get through that. She got through it. She met somebody else. It's not the end of the world. That's why I'm giving you these other podcasts like Brene Brown, Happy Even After. You can be happy after divorce. You can get divorced and do it in a nice way and get through it and have a decent relationship with your ex. Like wherever you are, there are ways through it where you can live your best life. So if you're in a position where you're like, hey, I haven't had kids, I haven't been married, so then let these people give you that example. Or if you're like, well, I'm going through a divorce. How can you do it in the best way? Look at the people that have already gone through it and have thrived, and they are thriving on the other side. How did they do it? Listen to those kinds of podcasts. You're already a podcast person. You're listening to this right now. Do some searches and if you find people that inspire you, just search their name in the podcast and see who else has interviewed them. What else have they done? I've been on tons more podcasts. If you want to hear me interviewed in different ways, you can do that, or you can interview. That's exactly what I did with Tanya. I was like, I want to hear different interviews. And I want to hear her talk about, I really want to hear about the F Factor talked about. But then I was like, oh my gosh, here she is talking about her relationship. It inspired me to do a whole podcast just because I was like, wow, look at how much she has to offer the world. Look at what the impact that she's made. She's built a beautiful brand. She's, in New York and Florida and working with celebrities, yet she was totally unhappy in the wrong relationship. So you can be living your dream, writing the book, living in the best city that, she was on top of the world, yet the relationship made her not want to live. I mean, that's how impactful these guys can be. And so her dad, this is where really listen to the people that love you and ask yourself, no one has come to me and said, I don't know, I just don't think Ian's right for you. And they're not going to say that because they're like, you seem so happy. You guys are so cute together. I mean, they're just like, everybody is so happy because they can see how happy we are together, how happy, his family sees how happy he is. Like when you find that right person, it's going to make you glow. It's going to make you be better. It's going to make you want to strive for more. And so if people that love you are like, this ain't it, her dad knew her, like people that know you, like your parents or people that have known you your whole life. And they're like, and he's saying to her, he's not smart enough. That was huge. And that was exactly the problem. They didn't have enough in common. She couldn't talk to him about anything. And it finally came down to a frozen yogurt. So if you go listen to that podcast, I'll let you hear the story about the frozen yogurt. And that was just kind of like the end of their relationship. So I hope this helps you. And if you are in a space where you're like, okay, Melissa, I have a situation. I'm with a guy. I don't know what to do. I broke up and I'm a mess. I'm trying to date, but I feel super insecure and I'm lost. I have two programs right now. I have the Level Up for Love, which is a four-part series where it's one-on-one coaching with me and one session with Ian and I. And if you want another session with Ian and I, you can request that as well. If you want the guy's perspective, you want to talk to us as a couple as well. So you have a couple perspective, you have the guy's perspective, and just, sometimes it just helps to hear a guy say things. I was like telling Ian, because the second thing is we have group coaching available as well. So if you want to join our group coaching, it's a weekly masterclass. like this week, which obviously by the time this airs, you won't be able to see it. But if you join, you can watch the replay. So this week, Ian's going to come on. We're going to talk about what are guys doing when they're not with you? What's happening? What's going on when he's not spending time with you? And we had this whole conversation about it. And I was like, oh my God, you need to talk about this in the group. So I created the group because so many women are sitting there by themselves. I used to do this. I would sit there by myself. All my friends were in relationships. I started to feel like this outcast weirdo. And you're not an outcast weirdo. You're in the majority. There's more single people than married people. There have been for like the past 15 years. So single people way outnumber married people. And happy couples are the minority. So everyone else is, basically a shit show. It's like no one has this figured out. And we need a space where we can have conversations like this, where you can meet, you can interact with people, you can DM people. And I actually removed our private space we have our own Slack space. If you're not familiar with Slack, it's a place where we have a feed. So it's similar to Facebook, where you can have a feed, you can DM each other, you can DM me, you can DM Ian. So we can all communicate, but we're not on social media. I finally have figured out a place where you can just come and it's like quiet and it's just that group, and you can click on the recordings, you can chat with the members, you can DM one, you can chat with us as a group, or you can DM somebody. And I want you to feel like, oh, I can make connections. I can talk with other women that are going through the same thing. So we've created the VIP group. That's the weekly group coaching. We meet every Wednesday night. If you can't make it every night, every Wednesday, you can watch the replay. The replays are all in our private chat group. But I hope that is a breath of fresh air for people, because I've had it on Facebook before, but when you go on Facebook, you're so distracted by everything that's going on and all the notifications. And I want this to be like, okay, if you've given up social media, you're off Facebook, whatever, I want you to have a space you can come and chat. So there's two options. You can meet with me one-on-one, or you can join just the group coaching. So we'll put all the links to all the things, and the links are in the bio on Instagram, or if you can't find them anywhere, send me an email, melissa@gumballlove.com. And so if you need one-on-one, or if you're like, hey, I want one-on-one and I want to be in the group, which I feel like is ideal. So that way I can spend time with you. We go through the quiz. So you'll have early access to the quiz that will tell you, okay, what kind of gumball guy are we dealing with? And what's making you weak for him? What patterns have you not identified? So it's all about stopping the cycle of sugar high romance, discovering your worth, and finding true love. We want to find you true love, but I want to show you the way to get there. And I want to offer you as much support and love and encouragement and tools, so you have this toolbox. And we'll customize your toolbox to see what works for you, what helps you get strength. And look, sometimes you're just going through heartbreak and you just need to know that somebody's there. You need to be able to message someone that understands. You need to, because people get sick of hearing the same thing over and over again, but I don't, because I know I see little tiny bits of progress, and this is just what I'm made to do. So you're never going to annoy me talking about the same guy. That's what I like to do. I want to be able to help you. Yeah, we might be talking about the same guy, but we're talking about it a little bit differently this time. And we're layering this on. And now we're looking at it from this perspective. So I'm going to help you grow, so you're just not in this merry-go-round and you feel like you can't get off. So I hope this helps you. I hope that you really pay attention to divorced women. Get a little deeper on those stories. Ask them, how did you know it was time to move on? And Tanya said in her podcast, someone told her, when you know, you know. It's like, ooh, what was that like? And really get deep on that. So then when you're sitting on dates, you're like, what would this guy be like 1 year in? What's that like? Because I will tell you, Ian's and my relationship in the last year changed so much, but it got so much deeper, so much more comfortable, so much more loving. It really does expand and grow. And It's just this new experience every single day. And I want this for you. I want you to be able to have that room for growth too, because you really want to be able to grow yourself and be with a partner who's also growing. And that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself. But I think you have enough to go on at this point. Let me know what you think of this podcast. I'd love to hear back from you. If you're interested in joining the VIP group or you want coaching, click the links in the show notes or link in the bio on Instagram. Send me an email, melissa@gumballlove.com. I would love to work with you. Our group coaching is filling up, but not to worry. I'll probably create a separate group if this group starts to get too big. We are growing quite a bit, and I haven't really been promoting it, but we're going to start putting it out there more and more. So as it grows, we might expand it to 2 nights. We'll see how it goes. I think we're going to end up at 2 or 3 nights, but that's okay. The more, the better. So join us, check it out. You can join for 1 month and cancel, or you can stay for 6 months, for as long as it takes. I want you to be able to jump in and out when you need help and support, because that's what we're here for. All right, my love. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for listening. If you want more information or to schedule a private coaching session, or better yet, to join the next Back to You Academy, go to gumballlove.com. If you loved this podcast, I would love for you to share it with your friends. And if you really loved it, a 5-star review is the best compliment you can give. Remember, you are enough, you are right where you should be, and the only thing you have to do is keep going. I'll leave you with my favorite quote by Henry David Thoreau. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams and live the life you have imagined. Until next time, I'll see you soon.